Welcome to Connerty Meadows Farm. I'm T-Con Iron Axe, and today we're going to be making Havarti. We'll set up our double boiler, we'll get our milk into our pot. The recipe that we're going to use calls for 12 to 15 liters of milk. We're using raw, unpasteurized milk.
Because we are using raw cow milk and the fat rises to the top, we need to shake it before adding it.
First thing you want to do is just make sure, especially if you're using raw milk, mix all the milk together. Just mix the milk together. We've got a lot of heavy cream in our milk, so I want to make sure that the cream is evenly distributed amongst the milk. And then we're going to turn this on to low, and we're going to heat this very slowly up to 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Milk has reached the temperature of 90 Fahrenheit. So now we're going to add the culture. And we're going to allow the culture to hydrate on the top of the milk. So we have two cultures that we're going to use for this recipe. We've got a quarter teaspoon of meso 2. We're just going to make sure it's evenly distributed on the top of the milk. And then we're going to allow it to hydrate. This culture, we have two cultures here. This is the Thermo B. And this one requires about 1/8 of a teaspoon. So again, mix it all the way around the top of the entire surface of the milk. And then we're going to allow this to hydrate. Recipe calls for a couple of minutes, but I'm going to set it for 10 minutes. I'm very consistent with how long I leave all my cultures on the top of the milk or the surface of the milk. And I just keep it consistent to 10 minutes.
After the culture has sat for 10 minutes, we use our ladle and we do 20 up and down strokes slowly.
We're going to set the timer now for 10 minutes, and we're going to allow the cultures to ripen. I like to put a lid on just to keep the felines out. After the culture is allowed to ripen, we're going to add calcium chloride. And so we're going to use a quarter cup. So we're going to dilute our calcium chloride in a quarter cup of unchlorinated water. So we have a well, so we don't have to worry about that. We're going to use 3/4 of a teaspoon of calcium chloride. For raw milk cheese, it isn't actually necessary. However, the calcium chloride will give you more of a consistent product over the course of a year. So similar to our culture, we're going to add it to the milk with some up and down motions, and we'll do 20 of those up and down motions to make sure that it's completely mixed within the milk. Following which we will allow it to sit for 5 minutes.
And while this is on fast forward and therefore very quick, please remember to go slowly.
5 minutes is up. We're going to add our rennet. And so again, we want to dilute our rennet in a quarter cup of water, unchlorinated water. So we'll add 3/4 of a teaspoon of our coagulant or rennet. We're using calf rennet. We're using 300 IMCUs. So it's 3/4 of a teaspoon. Again, diluted in a quarter cup of unchlorinated water. In our case, well water. Following our 5 minutes, we're going to add our rennet. 20 up and down motions. And then we'll allow our milk to coagulate for 30 to 45 minutes. Based on kind of all the cheeses that I've been making, I typically stick to the 45 minutes. You can check for your clean break, and then you can cut your curd. At this stage, there is no heat.
And just like all the other times, it is 20 up and down motions very slowly.
Again, we put the lid on to keep the felines out.
Not that the felines go on, Helen.
Okay, so it's been 45 minutes. First thing we'll do is we'll check for a clean break. Looks pretty good to me. We've got our clean break, so now we're going to cut the curd. So we're using a whisk because our plastic curd mill decided to give up the ghost. It's pretty cheap. I would stick to the metal products because they seem to last. So we're just going around in a circle. Then I'll move to the middle and make sure that we cut all the curd evenly. Following which, we're going to continue to stir for about 5 to 10 minutes. I generally err on the side of caution, given the high content of fat that's in our milk. So anytime that it asks for a particular range of time, I usually err on the higher side. So we're going to set our timer for 10 minutes now and continue to stir until the point at which the curds are a uniform size.
And while you stir for these 10 minutes, please do it slowly and consistently. You don't want to stir quickly and accidentally make butter.
We've been stirring for 10 minutes now. Our curd is uniform in size. At this point, what we'll do is we'll leave it alone for 5 minutes. We'll let it, the curd sink to the bottom of the pot. And at this time, we're going to get our warm water ready because what we're going to do is wash this curd. So we're going to remove some whey and we're going to replace it with some warm water. So we're going to kettle going and we'll come back in 5 minutes. So while that curd is settling to the bottom of the pot, I'm going to get my warm water ready. So you're aiming for about 176 Fahrenheit. So I boil the water, and mine holds about 1.7 liters. So I'm going to have to add some tap water to it. But we're aiming for about 176. If it's a little below that, it's okay. You do have a little bit of wiggle room here. And this is the stage when we're going to wash the curd. We're going to remove about 4 liters of whey, and then we're going to replace it with the 2 liters of hot water. I've gotten to the point where I don't measure out exactly 4 liters. Essentially what you're trying to do is remove as much whey until you get to the curd. This is a similar process that you use in making Gouda. And so it's a similar amount. Typically what you're looking for is about 1/3 of the pot that you're trying to remove. Different from Gouda is that when you replace the water, you're looking for the same amount of water to whey. Whereas in this case, you're looking to replace half the amount of whey with water.
When you're first starting out making this recipe, it is recommended that you actually measure out the amount that you're taking out.
All right, so it's about 1/3 of the pot. So now we're going to replace it with our hot water. So the one thing you'll find about this stage is a lot of this curd is going to get stuck in your whisk. So you have to be very cognizant of that because it will start to bunch up on you. Just take your time, do it slow, and just slowly kind of, as you bring it up to the surface, just allow some of that curd to get out of there. So at this stage, we want to allow the curd to stabilize at 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And once it does, we're going to add some salt. One of the things that you may notice, depending upon the temperature of water you use, is it may not stabilize at 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Could be a bit above or it could be a bit below. So the one thing you can do is just add either some cooler water to bring the temperature down, or add some hotter water to bring the temperature up.
Sometimes it gets stuck in there and you gotta get creative on how to get it out.
We chose to use the cheese mixer as we had already been using it for the cheese.
You could also use a knife. But once you get to a certain stage where it starts to warm up and the water mixed with your curd, you just simply have to twist as you come up and it'll clear your whisk. About 99.5 right now, so I may need to add a bit of more hot water just to warm this up a little bit. One of the other things that you want to make sure is that the curd doesn't mat. So make sure you break up all that curd gently with your stirring. And again, you're looking for 100 Fahrenheit. We're at that right now. And once you reach the desired temperature and it seems to have stabilized, at that point you're going to add your 1/4 cup of coarse salt.
Just keep gently stirring.
100 Fahrenheit. And so now we'll add our coarse salt. Again, 1/4 cup. And then we'll mix that all in.
We use kosher salt. Once you have the correct amount, just pour it in and then you can mix it in with your whisk.
We've added our salt. We're just a little bit touch below 100 Fahrenheit now with the addition of the salt. So I'm going to add a bit of a residual heat here, just very low on a very low simmer. Going to keep an eye on the temperature. We're going to let this curd sit in the way for the next 30 minutes. We're going to stir periodically to make sure that that curd is not clumping together. And we're going to try to maintain that temperature at 100 Fahrenheit. So you might be playing with your stove temperature a little bit here, just to make sure that you're maintaining that 100 Fahrenheit and keeping the curd at that temperature.
And we are just gently stirring here. You can also see when I take the whisk out that there is no curd stuck in it, and that's because they are finally down to a smaller size. We are going to spend some time washing our hands really, really well, because the next thing we're going to do is the texture test.
Our half an hour is up, so it's time to do, very gingerly, do the texture test. Just hold them together. We can pour this curd off and we can get her into the press.
We're going to get our strainer ready, and that means putting a cheesecloth on it and pour boiling hot water onto it to sterilize it. Next up, we will be pouring the curd off. You can see here we're scraping it out and putting it through the cheesecloth so it can drain. It's going to sit in the colander with the cheesecloth on top of it in the second pot to drain for 5 minutes. Once the 5 minutes has passed, we're going to break it up into the 2 molds. Normally, we would only use 1 mold. Unfortunately, or fortunately, whatever way you look at it, our cow has a very high yield, so we need to use 2 separate molds because all of the cheese won't fit into one. I'm going to go ahead and squish the cheese into the second mold, and then I'm going to add the follower and squish it down. These are going to stay in this mold under pressure with a constant steady drip for about an hour. Once that hour has passed, I'm going to come back and I'm going to redress the cheese. And basically that means that I take it and I flip them upside down and I put them back into the mold, as you can see me do here. And then I'm going to continue to do that with the second one. Then you're going to put them under pressure, firm, steady pressure, for about 8 to 10 hours. Once your 8 to 10 hours is up, you're going to take them out of the molds, and you can see me doing that here, and we're going to put them into a salt brine. Now on the top of this cheese, there was a little bit of extra cheese sticking off, so I cut the extra out so that it would be having a nice flat top. Here is the brine. We're going to stick it in the brine for about 8 hours, flipping halfway through. Then once it's done in the brine, we're going to put it on the shelf to air dry for 2 to 3 days, turning at least twice a day. You can see the many different cheeses we have here on the shelf in different stages of drying. Once they're dry, we put a cheese wax coating on them, which is a mold inhibitor, and then they'll be vacuum sealed and put in the fridge for 2 months, being turned at least 3 times a week.
This is cheese tasting with a Viking. Today we're going to be trying Havarti. And so this has been aging for roughly 2 months. So it's a very mild Havarti. We could let it age for a little bit more, but it's safe for eating after about 2 months. So we'll cut into this and have a look. It smells really good. It does smell really good. Smell it, honestly.
Oh, it does smell really good.
You could smell that cheese. It smells really good. I just want to eat it. I just want to eat it. Look at those wonderful holes. It's wonderful. The color is beautiful. It looks like cheese. And now we're going to eat it. Yeah, it's wonderful. That smells magnificent. Have a look at our cheese. And it kind of has the characteristic look that a Havarti would. It has a very creamy and a very lovely aroma. So let's try a piece. So one thing, we've got our cream wax on here, which is a mold inhibitor. So the first thing you got to do is kind of remove this, because it would add a definite yucky flavor to the cheese. But first impressions is that this is not a very, it's a very soft cheese. Definitely very creamy texture just by even the feel of it. It's been aging for about 2 months now, which is for a raw milk cheese, is probably the minimum that you'll want. A little bit longer will continue to accentuate some of the flavors in this cheese. Wow. Very creamy. But it tastes exactly like Havarti would. Much creamier. The stuff that I've tasted from the store before. Wow. That's very good. Wow. That is like perfect Havarti. Wow. I don't even think this needs to be aged anymore. Try it. It's really good.
Good.
You don't need to eat this with a cracker.
Hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't, give a like to their channel, and we'll see you guys next time on the farm while we make cheese.
I might be an aerospace engineer, but I can build chicken coops. I can bale hay. I can make cheese. I can forge axes. And I can drink a lot of brandy. What else would you like me to say about this cheese? We just eat it. We just eat the cheese because we're fat and we want to eat the cheese.